Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the Functional Diagnostic Nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. There we go. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will be your host for today's show, episode number 421 of the Health Detective Podcast. If you are watching this live with us right now, welcome. Or if you're watching this anytime in the near future, we will not have any podcasts other than kind of one, but you'll understand it when it happens, in the month of June. And that is because we have our fourth annual summer open house event. It's fdntraining.com/SOH 2025. It's a completely free event. I think there is a charge if you want replays, but otherwise the event is completely free. We have over 35 events scheduled for you guys. I'll keep it as short as I possibly can because people always ask us about these things and like, who is this for? This is one of those events that we do where everyone can benefit. The people that are maybe looking at FDN but are not actually in it yet, you're the person that could do all of the events. The person who does not necessarily want to do FDN for whatever reason, but just love the free content that we give out, you probably could benefit from all the events. And then trainees and graduates, it'd be pretty intuitive to see what would be relevant to you and what wouldn't be relevant to you. So Summer Open House covers a lot of the behind the scenes here at FDN. You'll actually get to meet so many people from staff. You're going to get to see what the trainees learn and the graduates get access to. But we also give you kind of this day in the life of actual FDNs that are out there doing the work. So we have 15 six-figure FDN sessions scheduled. And just the reason that we go to six figures is because I know we have an international audience. I live in America. If I want to take a vacation each year, I got to hit six figures, man, like a decent vacation, right? Where I'm actually buying some food from a to-go place or a restaurant when I'm out. So you got to hit that six-figure mark. We're trying to help you guys out with that. So that's why we set that stage. We wanted people who have had a certain level of success in their business over a period of time to interview and talk to so that you guys can get the best from them. And we figure even if you do half as well as them, you're doing pretty well overall. So that's fdntraining.com/SOH 2025. I can't wait to see you guys there. I'll be hosting all of the events, so it'll be a fun month. All right. Now we are going to move into our conversation with our guest today. We are not talking about business. We're going to be jumping into leptin amongst other things today in this episode. And I recognize Josh right away because there are guys at FDN. Don't get me wrong. There's actually plenty of guys, but generally speaking, we're a little rarer, so you kind of remember the names and faces a bit easier when they do stand out. So, or when you do see them. Josh Saint helps busy women and men struggling with fatigue, weight gain, hormone or emotional issues be able to sort through the confusion and find a clear path back to feeling free and full of energy. With 20 years of experience in natural health, he combines many lenses to viewing health, which include functional diagnostic nutrition, bioenergetics, nutrition, chiropractic, circadian biology, and emotional shock release. Saint Wellness is a private member ministry association with a goal to build love in our community and identify healing opportunities in all areas of our lives, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. His mission is, or their mission rather, is to help people find their unique path to wellness. Josh, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
I love this very mixed background you have. Hopefully we get to touch on all of it today. I had to jump into the leptin side first, but even preceding that, I have my first question that I always ask on this show. No one gets into this space by accident. Definitely no men I have ever met get into this space by accident. There's normally something that precedes it. So I'd love to touch on whether you had, personal health issues or someone in your life did, or just what led you into this space, because you probably didn't set out for this at 5 years old.
No, I did not. I had kind of some stages with this journey. So the first one was just got out of college. And I was young married and my wife got injured at work and we went to a chiropractor. And at that point, I was just kind of normally healthy, didn't really know much about natural health. And so we got to be friends with that chiropractor through her course of treatment. and he recommended a new school that he and several other chiropractors within like Palmer Chiropractic School were putting together a natural health school, and it was designed for people going into missions work, which was one of our goals. And so I just jumped right from my other degree, which was more marketing and websites and design and search engine optimization, all that kind of stuff. And we finished that school, and then for chiropractic and natural health, which kind of dealt with both chiropractic and also kind of some energy medicine type stuff, like Rife machines and PEMF and laser therapy and stuff like that. And we took that to Belize, and my wife at the time was a certified nurse midwife, so we kind of did a women's health clinic there, and did that for a little while. We wanted to be there longer, and that's a very long story, but we ended up coming back earlier because there were some safety issues because we had a 2-year-old and one on the way. So we ended up coming back, and then I just jumped back into the marketing side of life while raising kids.
Mhm.
Um, so then fast forward, and there I'm skipping over some parts of the story that are kind of relevant, but then there was a fairly hard divorce in the mix of that, um, and at that point, um, that's where like in 2015, 2016, that's where like depression, fatigue, all that kind of stuff set in, low energy, weight, like extreme weight loss, then weight gain, like through the hardest part of that, and and just really struggling with those types of issues.
Mhm.
Um, and then coming into like 2020, 2021, um, I, I've kind of kept up on the chiropractic side of things and some natural health, and always just it, I guess to be in this field, you're always got to be curious, and that's is like a problem solver. And when the 2020 event happened, it was like looking at different alternative things and looking at ways to solve that, and helping friends and helping my family through it. And I was like, you know what, I really want some more tools. And my kids are like, at this point, our fourth of our six are graduated. So like we're getting to a point where, you know what, I think I want to get back into the health space. And also I want to add some tools because chiropractic is great. But a lot of times with the natural health, there's a lot of great things out there, but a lot of times it's like you're just kind of guessing sometimes, because some things will work really great for somebody and not work for somebody else. So in kind of seeing what else was out there, I was attending a bunch of health summits, and then I saw Reed, and he was talking about functional, all these functional labs, and I was like, that's what I need.
Mhm.
And so instead of the long drum up, it was like 2 months. I was like, I just had to figure out when I could start within my schedule, and I just jumped right in and I did that. We did FDN and also the bioenergetic certification right at the same time. And because I really wanted to understand more about hormones, like about stuff generally from just studying like biochemistry and physiology, but from a chiropractic standpoint, you're really mostly concerned with nervous system,
Mhm.
and so that lens kind of falls short in some areas. So it was like I need more tools to be able to help people.
Sure.
Mhm.
I always I know I'm putting you on the spot because we're live, but when I say be honest, I always please mean be honest. So for someone like you who had pretty extensive experience in this space, or at least a very extensive interest in this space prior to coming to FDN, did you feel that that still gave you a significant or notable amount of new information and new perspectives? And this does matter because we have people that listen that sometimes have been in their respective careers or fields that are relevant to health for 20 or 30 years, and they don't know necessarily if FDN's a great fit. And I look at it as a completely unique system, but I also am biased because I went in, I mean, I didn't even go to college, right? I went to a semester and a
Mhm.
half at community college. This is the highest form of formal education I've ever done. So, of course, I look at it as this amazing thing that taught me everything about health. But I wonder for you, did you actually learn a bunch of new stuff, or are you more, I mean, you clearly like it, you got on the podcast, but do you like it for the community, or what did you get from it as someone who already had a good amount of experience?
Well, what I got from it was actually kind of putting lots of different pieces together because you know that gut health is important and hormones play a role, but just really digging into the details of like the hormone cascades and what's affecting what, and actually how different symptoms that pop up can be either, upstream or downstream of the actual cause. And so from 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 a natural health side, it was mostly just learning about like I'd known about organic food and trying to eat clean and getting away from sugar and processed food and that kind of stuff. But it still was missing pieces where like some health foods for some people are really good, but it affects other people other ways. So like understanding like I hadn't heard of metabolic typing prior to this and how and just how everybody is so individually different.
Mhm.
Just learning some of those cascades really helped dial that in, and then also refocus my um, my brain into looking deeper into hormones.
Sure.
Mhm.
uh, and I mean, that's a somewhat of a good transition. I normally try to make them a little smoother, but and that's on me, right? It's gonna be slightly rough, but mostly because I'm so excited to get into leptin. So if we can, I'll kind of just jump right to that because leptin is something that is actually quite important. It's something that if you're in the United States and you can order blood work, which by the way, guys, listen, I love FDN. You do not need to be an FDN to order your own blood work if you're willing to pay out of pocket. In like 45 out of the 50 states, you can do this on things like Ulta Labs and many other providers out there. I'm not affiliated with any of them. In other countries can be a different story, right? But it's just crazy to me because people have access to this stuff if they want to pay for it. And this is not actually one of the cheaper markers per se. But let's get into this. I would like to know for those that have never even heard of leptin or maybe just seen the word but don't even understand like what it is, like what are we looking at when we measure this. Let's start with the basics, then we can kind of get more advanced. What is leptin and what are we looking at when we actually measure this?
So leptin is a hormone that's released from your fat tissues or adipose tissue, subcutaneous fat, and it is a hormone that is a direct messenger from your body to your brain, and it tells you about your energy stores all around the body. And so another way to look at it is it's an accountant for electrons in the body. And so every night that like the circulating leptin, like when you have more fat, that's going to release more leptin. And essentially, the ideal way that it's supposed to work is that when your body sees that leptin circulating, it says, "Hey, I've got enough. I've got fat. I've got enough energy." Or if you don't have enough leptin, it's like, "Hey, we need more." And so it's going to regulate your hunger signals. It's going to like if you have enough or if you have a lot of leptin circulating, it's going to suppress your hunger, and then also it can stimulate thermogenesis and metabolic activity. So it's really connected to metabolism and hunger, but it also connects to a whole bunch of other things that aren't readily um, just known.
Mhm.
And leptin, it doesn't, I find that it doesn't get talked a lot about because like, it's not something that FDN touches on. It touches on a whole bunch of other hormones, which is amazing. And
You're correct. Yeah.
yeah, and so when I started looking at different patterns that I was seeing within clients, um, it started, you start seeing different patterns that people, especially with, fatigue and different things. And we're always looking at all these different systems, but I was seeing leptin connected into many of them.
Mhm.
And um, so with leptin, it's regulating that, but there are things that can block that, and then that block that receptor or block that sensitivity that we're supposed to have, and that is where you get into like leptin resistance. Mhm.
Well, I like that you use that wording too, because that's actually was the next place I was going to go. Similar to how you can be insulin sensitive or insulin
Mhm.
resistant, it's obvious, very common for people to kind of have these resistance issues or sensitivity issues, if you will. And what's kind of funny is I'm not saying they're perfectly correlated, but very often you would find someone if they kind of have one issue, I'm going to bet more money than not that they might have the other one there as well. And you know what? I like live feedback. Not that you were necessarily giving feedback, but I'm kind of like, maybe we should put that in the course, or maybe that should be in some advanced course in some way, because Dr. Lori Rose has her weight loss one. So
Mhm.
I'll get to the team on that, because it is kind of cool. I actually was introduced to this, um, and I know he's an interesting guy, but he's very smart and he does help the space a lot for a variety of reasons. I learned it from Dr. Jack Kruse. That was the
Yep.
first place that I saw this, and this guy has this whole leptin protocol, which I think is kind of funny because it's not necessarily the way that so many people get into certainly Western medicine, but even functional medicine. It becomes very much a take this for that type of thing. And if you look at some of the recommendations in his leptin protocol, it's about as natural as you can get, which is pretty
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but maybe the next question here, we might touch on that protocol to some degree. But the next question here would then be, okay, so one, how would I know if this marker is off? I mean, I could get it, we could talk about what that would look like to get it tested, how much it might cost. And then two, what are the steps that I need to take so that this can be within range? And it's not just to do that, it's obviously for the broader picture of what it being in range
Mhm.
actually means for a healthy individual.
Right. Yeah. So there are some signs that because like you don't necessarily have to run out and get a leptin panel. I mean, that's certainly helpful to understand, like if you're very high or very low, because you can be leptin resistant and have high leptin, and that's typically more of your when you're overweight, but you can be severely underweight as well and be leptin resistant, kind of on the other side. More typical is the overweight side, but some of those quick markers is like if you're overweight by more than 25 pounds, that is a general sign that you've got some leptin resistance going on. And then there, and then like you were saying, it ties a lot into our circadian rhythm. So, and that's one of the great things about FDN with the dress protocol is it's essentially trying to get back your your circadian rhythm and eating healthy. So it addresses a lot of those things, but there are some nuances and specifics that kind of where you can optimize more for that. Um, some other symptoms would be like if you have some intense carb cravings, especially at night. If you're constantly feeling like you need to snack, those are signs that it's malfunctioning and isn't working properly. Another one would be sleep disruption, and just general or if just general circadian disruption. So I've got a cool little quiz on my website that it's not necessarily a definitive lab, but you can answer like under a minute. You can answer some questions and get a good idea on what kind of a level of leptin, like if you might be considering that. Or if some of this sounds like you, like it can give you a good idea, like, oh yeah, I probably should explore this a little more.
Where can people find that? It's a little early, but Tracy, if you are there, like if what's your website? Because people are going to want to check
Yeah,
that out now.
it's it's saintwellness.org. And then in my menu, there's a thing for the leptin resistance quiz.
Awesome. And thank you, Tracy. So, um, okay. But one of the things, yeah, with the lab testing, I'm biased towards that, right? Just
Mhm,
because I,
mhm,
I mean, I'll run it on pretty much anything. To your point, though, this is one that I do believe that you could see a lot of the stuff that's going on, or even
mhm,
just answer that quiz and kind of get a good hint there. I do think labs are almost a personal thing for certain people in the sense that, like, all right, would I tell pretty much anyone, hey, maybe don't eat gluten again? I think I would,
mhm,
especially,
mhm,
American wheat and stuff like that. But did I need to see that on the lab tests for me to actually permanently remove it? I did. I'm like a little kid. I needed to see red bad. Okay, Evan, you don't do that anymore. And then
mhm.
somehow I can maintain that for 7, 8 years, but I needed to see it. So similarly, it can be kind of cool to track it over time if someone has the funds and means to do that, and see where they'd be at. But if I'm not mistaken, and I'm sorry, I wouldn't expect you to know this offhand, but leptin is one of the more expensive ones to run by itself, right? Isn't that anywhere from like I my gut wants to say like $80. Does that sound right?
It sounds right. And I'm trying to think. I actually looked it up on Avexia the other day. Because you can get it added to, like, if you're doing a normal blood draw,
Mhm.
sometimes you can get added for not quite as much.
Okay.
But yeah, that's where, and then just like a general marker, if you do ever get it run, you want to be between like 4 and 9,
Mhm.
and that's nanograms per milliliter. Women can run a little bit higher just naturally because they have a little bit more fat,
Mhm.
but that's kind of in the range. You don't want to be much over 9, um, because that's where you're getting more of that circulating and your body's not responding to it.
Sure. So yeah, you don't guys don't have to go out and get this marker, but it could be a cool thing, like an add-on to another panel. And then again, there's always going to be the FDNs and or listeners out there that just they can't resist. They got to run
Mhm.
it all. Sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say another lab that sometimes this can come up on where it's like indirectly measuring it would be like if you're running a thyroid panel, because a lot of times if you have thyroid issues, you've got leptin issues because the leptin is upstream from the thyroid and then interacts with all those things. So it's not a typical one like on your basic thyroid panel, but if you're having some thyroid issues and you're wanting to look at this as well, it would be you want to look up your reverse T3,
Mhm.
and then if that's elevated, um, especially outside of optimal, that's a sign that the T3 to T4 conversion is off, and it's going more to your reverse T3. So, and that is a definite connection with leptin resistance.
Very cool. And this is what's so kind of interesting with you mentioned how FDN. Oh, we touched on the circadian rhythm side, obviously, so that could help
Mhm.
the leptin thing. Similarly, Cruz talks about the leptin protocol, but the reality is the action steps on both sides, and probably even a third and fourth side here that we're not talking about right now, kind of end up being foundationally similar enough. And
Mhm.
the funny thing is, I look at most insert XYZ protocol for a hormone here, like testosterone protocol, estrogen protocol, whatever it might be that you want. So much of that stuff, if you do the right things with your body, your hormones kind of, I found at least, seem to naturally go
Mhm.
the way that they should be going. So if you have a locked in circadian rhythm, you're not eating right before bed, and you are doing most of your other lifestyle stuff right, a lot of those hormones, guys, are going to stay pretty healthy for a while. It's just how many people are actually outside all day doing the right stuff that they need to be doing, probably few and far between. I wanted to kind of go back to the first part of your answer with leptin. And I don't know if we even needed to touch on this. Maybe you've already covered it, but you had kind of said that outside of the, I want to get the wording right. I think you said something along the lines of outside of like the stuff like the cravings for carbs all the time or snacking all the time or waking up, there could be other things and other concerns with why you'd want to make sure you're not leptin resistant. So do we get to touch on that stuff yet? Or what are some of the more disconnected things that are not necessarily obvious that might be a complication of this leptin resistance?
So, some of the ones that aren't quite as obvious would be, one is reproductive health, because you need adequate levels of leptin in your system to be able to fertility, for fertility and egg production. And then also another one is immune health, because leptin helps modulate your immune response. So too much leptin actually can be pro-inflammatory, because leptin is a little bit pro-inflammatory, but like everything, when we're talking about like reactive oxygen species and stuff like that, is those all have their place, and they have a certain function and signal to the body. So so a little bit of inflammation is good, a lot of inflammation is bad. So the more you have circulating, the more inflammatory your body's going to be, and so then that kind of connects to those inflammatory markers going up with obesity and all those other things. So as we see, like this, it's a part of the story, that's creating overall inflammation in the body. It also is in our stress response. So if you have more levels of leptin circulating in your, um, it will downregulate cortisol production. So it's in that HPA axis, because your leptin actually docks in your hypothalamus, and and if those receptor sites aren't working properly, and you get more leptin and you're down regulating cortisol, and that kind of shows up for me like in my labs. My labs were like baseline cortisol. Like I had a circadian response, but it was like a little bit in the morning, and then it went down to like point zero, 0.2 or something
Oh,
like.
jeez.
So it was like I was like at the very, very bottom. So it downregulates cortisol, and then it also influences for bone health, um, like bone formation and reabsorption, and also like we were talking about before, it connects to thyroid health specifically. So those are kind of like things that you wouldn't necessarily connect with like the hunger hormone,
Mhm.
but it based on that's why some people call it the master hormone, because it affects so many different areas and so many other hormones,
Mhm.
and especially being in that HPA axis and HPG axis and the brain gut axis. Um, and another thing that like you had mentioned insulin resistance.
Mhm.
If you're snacking in between meals, that's raising you're getting these little insulin spikes throughout the day, and those can actually fill up your leptin receptors as well. So they'll compete for the same receptors in the brain. So that'll also kind of blunt that, make that receptor blind to what your leptin levels are.
Gotcha.
Um, and it sounds like it sounds like a lot of about leptin is about food, or because and that's kind of the surprising thing is, and this goes back to kind of the Jack Cruz, you know, perspective on it, is it's actually more about light,
Mhm.
um, and getting proper light, because also another thing that will um, influence and increase our both blood sugar and insulin is blue light. So if you're getting a big hit of blue light throughout the day and even at night, that'll disrupt your circadian rhythm, which then creates those downstream effects. And leptin docks in the hypothalamus between, you know, it's kind of a range, but it's usually at night in the dark, and most most likely it's like in within midnight to 2 a.m.
Okay.
So if you're not sleeping in that window, or if you have blue light present, it's gonna knock that out, because it's gonna raise your insulin, it's gonna raise your blood sugar, gonna s- and raise your cortisol, and and that's gonna compete with and not allow the leptin to properly communicate. So it's both a sleep, a light story, and then also like if you're snacking late at night, that's also spiking it. So it's this vicious circle that goes around.
I love it's always just so nice to get to talk to someone else who's as passionate about the light stuff, at least it
Mhm.
seems, as me, because I think everyone in functional medicine kind of has their little subtopics that they love. You know, there's people that love a certain type of test, or they want to talk about mold all the time or whatever. And to me, this was just one of the most profound sub subjects that I ever stumbled upon. Even like you mentioning these different axes that come or are involving the hypothalamus, right? So when I learned, because I had already had this FDN information, then I was connecting these other things. So FDN, one of the first things that you're learning about is the HPA axis, the HPT axis, all this kind of stuff. And then you find out that the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the SCN, is in the hypothalamus. And so now listen, you have to be a good scientist. Just because one thing means one thing is true does not mean the next thing's true. But I'll take a bet that if that thing lives in my hypothalamus, and this is not a proper way to say it, right? It doesn't live there per se. But if that's in there, then maybe, just maybe, the light influences have something to do with my entire hormonal makeup of my body. And it just, this is an anecdote, of course, but this made so much more sense to me when I saw my sister was sick when I was a kid. I was sick when I was a kid. My mom was super sick. My dad was the one with the worst health habits out of all of us. Now, of course, he would have a unique genetic makeup compared to my mom, sister, and myself, even though we're in the same family. I get that. But there was also one thing that he did differently than all of us. He's been a landscaper my whole life. And when I say landscaper, I mean that man wakes up at sunrise, right? Not because he's into health, just because that's what he chooses to do. He goes outside. He's outside for 10 to 12 hours a day. Even when he's driving, the windows are open. He comes in, well, he's been working his butt off all day. So he goes to bed early and on time and then does the same thing the next day. This has been for decades. And I mean, it's to the point where he is so tan. Have you ever been to like Key West or any of the Florida Keys, and you've seen the lifers there that look like they're leather
Oh yeah.
almost?
Mhm.
He's approaching that basically. I give him another
Mhm.
5-10 years, and he looks like walking leather. But that has to do something. Again, I know it's an anecdote, just one experience, but I'm like, how does he get away with smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day,
Mhm.
drinking Coca-Cola, eating pizza? I'm trying everything over here, and there was a time where I was still less healthy than him. And I have to think that we have focused on a lot of the right things in functional medicine. Food does matter, no question about it. But it's almost like you're focusing, like if there's a jar that's could be 100% filled, you're focusing on something that is important but fills like maybe 20-30% of the jar, and you're missing this thing that fills 50 to 60% of it. And if you just had more information about the jar, or it was more publicly shared, you'd realize, wait, I'm going to dedicate my whole life to focusing on the 50-60% and try to do okay with the 30%, versus, that's the exact opposite of what happens in the world of functional medicine. We go 100% perfect on the food. And then it's like, well, yeah, I'll get 15 minutes of sunlight, work inside all day.
Mhm.
And maybe I'll put my blue light blockers on an hour before. It's like, no. I would optimize for that second one any day of the week and
Mhm.
cheat on my food 20% of the time,
Yeah.
versus cheating on my light more so. So that's just my opinion and my experience. I don't know. Do you kind of take the same philosophy, or would you correct anything with that?
Yeah, no, that's definitely my philosophy too. And so that, and a lot of times when you, especially for like a new client who's doesn't know anything, like making all those food adjustments is is pretty intense.
Mhm.
And to try to get it done like as quickly as we want them to, it's so many changes. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll step them through the light first, and then we might do like a HTMA right away, because that's a longer, like it's looking at a bigger slice of time, because and that'll tell us some good information. But while we're waiting for results, a lot of times the first month I'll have them doing the light and food and timing, and trying to clean up where they can, but not putting more stress on trying to get things perfect,
Mhm.
because that's a lot of times, and then disappointing when you screw up, or like, oh, I ate the wrong type of food. And more, it's like getting back in tune with your body. And it's kind of funny looking back at, like, through the stress story. Like, I was going through that divorce, right before that, like for the 2 years prior to that, I was building our house. And so I was up at sunrise, working on it outside, the entire day, not necessarily eating perfect, but just like eating in windows, because you're just like, you eat in the morning before you go out, and then like you might eat lunch like sometime later in the day. So I
Mhm.
was having that non-snacking window, um and then and going through a whole bunch of other stress with that, with because there's life, relational stress, all that stuff going on. But I was able to handle it until I got the house done. Then divorce happened, lots of chaos. And with the depression and all that stuff, I shut myself in, and then I was focusing on my, because like I was also not very good at going to bed very early, because I would build the house during the day and then do my consulting at night.
Mhm.
And so then it was just like, oh, I'll just be in the house and do my do my SEO stuff and my marketing stuff. And so my light got bad, and my food got bad, my snacking got bad, like everything, and everything crashed, because I
Mhm.
was probably also, like, when we talk about within FDN, kind of your like cortisol, that curve where you're in, like, exhaustive phase
Yeah.
versus like acute phase. I was able to keep through that acute phase because I was in the light, like your dad, for so long. And then when I got out of it, I crashed because that was the thing that was actually propping me up. Um, and so everything else kind of dysregulated, and then that's where you get more blue light, and you get depressed, and you're watching movies and 2 a.m. and it's,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Depression's a nasty one. It's something,
Mhm.
I mean, I've shared on the show, right? I've experienced. I may have even experienced more throughout my life than I sometimes realize. Because there are different types, right? Because
Mhm.
the type
Mhm.
that you're bringing up actually started with an emotional thing, and then who knows? I mean, these terrible habits that come from depression often, I think, just make it worse, right? One of the biggest risk factors for someone becoming depressed, especially under the age of 18, is keep them up past 12 a.m. Like, we know
Mhm,
that for a fact. So when I
mhm,
talk in schools, I don't tell them to go to bed on time. No 17-year-old wants to hear that, but I build rapport and actually kind of show them the stats afterward. I say, you go to bed whenever you want. I just wish someone would have told me that. And they do seem to receive it well, or at least they're respectful enough that they don't like laugh at me when I say it.
mhm,
But that's one of the biggest risk factors. You keep someone up late and screw up their circadian rhythm, they're going to get depression. But ironically, if you have depression for some other reason, depression is it's almost like this perfect mental health disease where it somehow knows what to get you to do to keep it worse. And I'm not literally suggesting that, but it almost seems like it's just like written perfectly in an evil sense, like, because depression gets you to do all of the habits that make depression worse. That is when the
mhm,
doom scrolling becomes worse. Social isolation, erratic hours of sleep. Many people will either not eat because they just have no hunger whatsoever, or it
mhm.
sounds like you might be more like me, where I've had the no hunger thing, but more often it's like, let's just crave the worst thing in the world.
Yep,
You know what I mean?
yep,
Like, give me
yep.
like 400 grams of carbs. So um, one of the things that I would imagine, I could be wrong, but it sounds like it might have come from some experiences that you've had with this learning experience with the relationship and the divorce, is maybe now this view that you have, or focus emphasis that you have on love and connection. Maybe that came from that, maybe it
Mhm.
didn't, I don't know. But I wanted to make sure that we got to that at some point in the show today. We still have 15 minutes, so I'd love to kind of transition to that. Another rough transition for me today, but at least we get to cover all this cool stuff. Why did that become so important to you? I think when people think of, oh, dude, I'm all about love, they picture some hippie with dreads in the field, smoking a joint or something. You don't strike me as that type of person at all. And there's a very authentic way to mean love, and the hippies mean it authentically too. It's just
Mhm.
different than the stereotype that we might be thinking of in our head. So what does this emphasis on love and connection, what does that mean to Josh specifically?
Well, that's kind of that middle part of the story that I had skipped over. And the family that I was a part of, because my faith was a big part of my life growing up. Dad was a youth pastor, and grew up in the church and passionate about ministry and all that. Um, the the so my partner also kind of had similar path, but what I didn't realize is that family was much more fundamentalist
Mhm.
and strict and very, very black and white. And then also once we got married, was way more restrictive, where then my parents were, it becomes about good and evil, and really kind of redefining terms and fighting over stuff like that. So it takes the form of, I don't know if you've ever looked at like borderline personality disorder,
100%, yes.
but it there was that there, but also, which I didn't know anything about until I went through it. But also, it was like that coercive control, like it was like a little family cult unit where it was only them, and then like so my parents got chucked out, my family, my friends, and so you become very, very isolated, and so it was, and nothing or nobody's good enough. Um, so through there, you get kind of compressed into this little window, and so like once that kind of fractured apart, even though that was hard, I think that was actually a good thing to kind of go through that and then come out on the other side, and then immediately I was like reconnected with my parents, reconnected with family, reconnected with friends, and seeing the importance of having different connections, and whether they're of the same specific faith or denomination or religion or whatever. Those relationships actually are really critically important, because that we are communal beings, and so um, the more you isolate yourself, and like you were talking about, like that depression is kind of like a really um, it's like a perfectly designed bad thing, where when you start walling yourself off from people and relationships, that can that's a bad cycle, and it will continue to spiral into itself. So getting out of that, and then finding, like finding I got remarried, and finding somebody who's aligned with where I'm at, and like we're actually like in a partnership and friendship, and the world is expanding as far as like friends, family, clientele, just being able to connect with people on a real level. And then also then that taught me a lot about different types of, you know, um, emotional shock conflicts, trauma, and working through my own, and then also kind of with the bioenergetic side, that there's a lot within that framework and that system that dovetails with FDN and with the different stuff that we do kind of in the natural health world, where it can take forms and language that sometimes if you're, sometimes Christians will have a real hard time with, as far as like the terminology, because we get to like very like we want to like fight against things that are seen as maybe evil, or like with traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurveda,
Mhm.
or energy and that kind of stuff. But with the bioenergetics, I think the really neat thing is through one of the scan tools that I use is it there's emotional oscillators, and it can actually bring up specific, not necessarily like your actual thing, but like within um like different, like if you're going through a relationship or boundary issues or fear or anger or resentment. And when I scanned myself with that, like all those things popped up, boom, 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 and they were exactly connected with what I was going through. And also then that connects emotions with specific um, places in your body. So um, that whole um, so in my practice, we do actually talk about you as not only physical, like talking about leptin and all the hormones and all that stuff, but also emotional and spiritual, because it's all connected. Like stress in any of those regions will do the same thing to the body.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's and I find not always, but I find the female audience or portion of the audience is more open to that, right?
Mhm.
For
Mhm.
myself, it's not that I wouldn't even say I'm open to it. I think that's a misconception. They think like males are automatically not open to it. I'm not saying that doesn't even exist. I actually think it's more I didn't get it. Like
Mhm.
it's not
Mhm.
even that I'm rejecting your premise. It's that I don't understand how this is connected. And I like how you said it's all stress, because if someone explained it to me that simply, that really is what it is. It's like, okay, Evan, let's keep it as basic as possible. Chronic elevated stress levels are going to affect you negatively. You agree? Yes or no? Well, of
Yeah.
course, yes, that makes sense, right? So whether or not you get an immune response from eating gluten or you're fighting with a family member,
Mhm.
both of those things, yes, they affect the body slightly differently, but one place that they'd be similar is that stress response is going to be elevated, which you just agreed, Evan, is going to lead to negative effects long term. So I just needed someone to kind of break that down to me, be like, oh wow, like okay, yeah, so those are connected, and it's not as black and white, right? Because I can, and I think more men, certainly me, are prone to that black and white thinking. I can define whether or not I've eaten gluten today. That's
Mhm.
objective.
Mhm.
But how do I define whether or not I engaged in otherwise healthy relationships? Because is that just the absence of yelling, but is it also the inclusion of love? But what
Yep.
defines love, right? So then it becomes a little bit more nuanced and subjective, which that's tough. I can't always I can figure it out a lot of the times, but not maybe instantly and initially. So I promise I'm getting to a question here. The question actually was, outside of working with you, which of course we'll share where people can find you very soon. Um, what are some maybe low hanging fruit practical steps for the love and connection side as someone who has been or experienced this, not even with just depression, but because of something that you got found yourself in, this isolation from some of the main connections in your life, and this inability to, or inability to see them and communicate with them probably in a regular way. What are some things that you'd recommend as practical action steps for people that are listening right now to kind of make sure that love and connection side, if you will, is dialed in? Because maybe they're like me. They're like, I know when I don't eat gluten, that's easy enough. But how do I know if this side of my life is in check?
Well, in general, we think that everybody is just like us. as far as like how we think and act.
Mhm.
So a big thing to do is just actively listen, because sometimes it'll pop up in your head, oh, this person probably thinks this about me, or yeah, or or I would be really upset at the situation, so they probably are feeling the same exact way. And I think the best thing to do is take that judgment out of it and then really try to step in somebody else's shoes. And that's how it has helped me, and also help clients when you get outside of yourself and start looking for how somebody else might think about things, or take another person's perspective, or actually try to walk in their shoes, and actively listen to what they're saying and how they're saying it, and really draw that connection together and look for the things. I think the bigger thing is, instead of looking for differences, look for similarities. I mean, that's about as simple as it can get. And instead of looking to where you disagree on something, maybe you guys are saying the same exact thing, but it is, you're saying it with different words, or you're looking at it. It's like the blind man and the elephant. Like, you're all touching a different part of it. Like, so taking that time to step back and really listen to what their side of it is.
Yeah. I've definitely um approached that in probably the nerdiest way possible, but I don't even
Mhm.
know that I was setting out to do that originally, but I got very into personality assessments, like some
Oh
basic
yeah.
ones,
Mhm.
and that also led to I love the Big Five and Hexaco. Not that other personality assessments aren't great, but there are ones that have much more data behind them, and currently those are by far the ones that I know of that have the most research behind it.
I
And
use that in my practice. Yep.
of course, okay,
Mhm.
perfect. So all right, well then you would know this right offhand, and hopefully this shows that I've actually worked on something. If you ever listened to me talk before, because I don't think I display this as much, hopefully, but I even when I take it with a partner or family member, so I mean, I'm checking my self awareness and making sure that I'm actually answering correctly, always score in the 0th to 3rd percentile of agreeableness, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, I don't go out and look for issues every day or something like that. But for those that don't know, like one of the things that could come with that is just a skepticism. And
Mhm.
that is definitely something that I have. Like I walk around and I didn't realize this. My wife, Maddie's been very helpful in helping me reflect on it. Whether I don't even know if that was intentional. She's just like, dude, everyone is not thinking this way. Like I'm walking around naturally thinking that this person must be out to get something in this interaction in some
Mhm.
way. So it's a game. They inherently can't be trusted. And it's like kind of insane when you hear from someone else that it's like, dude, yes, some people are like that, but like most people aren't. And then you think like, well, where does that come from genetically? Maybe did you have particularly bad experiences with the few who can't be trusted? So now my genetics, make me more prone to this, and just say, are you better off being skeptical of everyone? I don't know. And disagreeableness has to do with a lot more than just that. It's kind of one of the lighter parts of it, if I'm being frank.
Mhm.
But it's just so interesting to find something that's so ingrained with you that it's not even that I'm consciously thinking this. I just default, am assuming it. And then someone comes in and corrects you, and they're like, dude, that's not like everyone's not out to get you. Everyone's
Mhm.
not out to just do a one up in a conversation. So, um, yeah, I know that's not the main point of the conversation, but I
Uh,
also love all this personality stuff. So,
yeah, and the same thing that can be a hindrance for understanding other people is actually can be your superpower too, because you can hone in and really, you can kind of suss out where people are not being honest, or there might be somebody who's playing a game, or so it's like, so like you just have to, I think it's really helpful, like especially that big five assessment, where you can start to understand yourself a little better, so you can kind of keep that in check and know your tendencies and be like, oh, am I really going too far into this? Maybe I should pull back a little bit. But yeah, and it's good to have a partner to kind of help you do that too.
yeah. So, guys,
Mhm.
find some system that works for you, because that
Yeah.
is probably one of the quicker ways I found to have that practical empathy for others, or just really understanding and being able to put yourself in their shoes. Also, researching certain things genetically has helped me. This is the part that I find so strange. And Josh, you might be aware of this already, so it's more for the audience, but we're only going to get better at this. That's what's creepy. So if roughly 50% of people in America currently are voting democratically, or I'm sorry, not democratically, but as a Democrat, and roughly 50% voted in a conservative way, which was pretty much true in the last presidential election. You would assume then that if I had a baby and I were to guess randomly what political party this person's going to be when they're 40, I'm going to be right about 50% of the time. But what we know is we could cheek swab the baby and I could start guessing based solely off genetics, and I'd be right about 65% of the time. Now, that's not perfect, right? That's not like a perfect correlation, but the fact of the matter is it should be 50-50. It's not 50-50. So we know certain things like our genetics influence how we are going to choose to vote down the road. And when I saw that, even if it's not 100% correlation, so don't get me wrong, that was one of the things that I think made me respect other people the most, again, as nerdy as it is, from different political sides, because I'm like, if there is some chance that I could have predicted this when you didn't even have words that you could form, maybe this is more complicated than we think. And it's also quite humbling because a lot of the opinions that I have that I like to believe are very grounded in data. And because I got the facts and listened to all this stuff, I have to also acknowledge that maybe my genetic makeup is making me more biased towards something that I can't even realize I'm biased towards, right? So I'm not, again, promoting or not promoting one political side. It's just kind of fascinating that especially in such a time that there feels like it's very extremely polarizing on either side, that I could still guess and be right 65% of the time, even though it should be 50. I could cheek swab a baby and I could have guessed 20, 30 years ago whether or not they would have voted for Trump or Kamala in this last election. That's scary to me. That's kind of wild. And it's humbling.
And the other cool thing is, like, as cool as genetics is, epigenetics is even cooler.
Sure.
So then your environment, whether it's, light, sound, like emotional environment, that can shape you. Because if you grew up in a one side or the other, but then you steep yourself within the other side, that's going to change kind of your thought patterns, and like based on your experiences, that's going to start, bending. It can bend one way, it can further cement you one way, or you can bend out of it the other way. And that's, I think, kind of the cool thing about um, epigenetics, and how important emotions and taking taking every thought captive, as far as like being able to, if you start obsessing on kind of the negative side, or on different types of emotions, or thoughts, that will kind of that'll continually steep you into one side or the other. So not necessarily politically, just like as far as thoughts, behaviors,
Sure.
patterns. Yeah.
Josh, 50 minutes was not even close to enough because you're hitting on all my favorite things, dude. We got personality assessments, we got some spirituality, we got leptin and light. Like, come on, man. You're allowed to pick one. But these are like literally the things that I talk about when I'm not doing this podcast, even though one is health related, of course. So we can absolutely go a few minutes over here because I want to make sure this is the most important part. One, I'd like to just know of some client stories right now. Even just one's totally fine. That's what we usually do. So when I say a client story, I mean to the degree that you're able to share. I'd love to take a second to talk about someone that maybe has come to you at the end of their rope. They're like, oh my gosh, nothing's worked. And you're one of the last people I'm going to try. And maybe your services and your practice was able to finally help them get to where they wanted to go. So are there any particular client stories that are especially important to you or just very powerful?
Yeah, and this one kind of has all of the different things, because when I first connected with this person, I thought it wa- it was somebody that I knew from way back when. We reconnected, ha- brought up they had some issues. I was like, "Yeah, I'll see if, you know, let's get on a consult and see if I can help you."
Mhm.
And then I heard their story, and it was like, "Oh my goodness." I could probably help with some I could probably help optimize some things and make you feel a little better, just doing some of the general things. But um 44, and chronic fatigue, chronic pain for 20 years, even like thoracic outlet syndrome, to where like couldn't use their arm, and for the last 5 years has been on disability, has had like 15 plus surgeries, and is on like gabapentin and like, two or three other heavy duty pain meds, migraines, like every day, like just non-functional. And and so I was, so I said, well, I could probably help you a little bit. Just try not to overpromise, but it was one of those things like I knew that I needed to help them, and they were willing to kind of go through it, and there's a bunch of medical issues that they're having medical oversight with, um, but still not getting anywhere. And it's someone who knows about healthy foods, is a health coach as well. But um, so we started working together. We did HTMA, we did a Dutch test, saw hormones were out of whack. HTMA showed us a lot of good information, but we started working and also was dealing with leptin resistance. So we started working on the simples and really got those things in line. And sure enough, headaches started to go away. But then what we really identified was, um, there were emotional triggers that were sending that pain signal down, like all the way from the head down through the neck, down through the arm and into the hands. And so as we identified that, because we did a bioenergetic scan and saw a lot of that stuff. As we started working on it, the emotional triggers got better, the sleep got better. Like as we balanced the circadian rhythm and get, like migraines gone, pain down to like almost minimal, like went from not being able to write and journal, like, and that was important to her, to being able to like actually write and journal. And she actually flew over here for a 2-week intensive, because I also do some in-person sessions.
Oh, cool.
Um, and so we did a combination of like just on-body treatments, and just some counseling, because there are other things there that came up in the assessments and whatever. But it was amazing to see that transformation, and so cool. And it was like somebody that I thought I could probably help them feel a little bit better just by optimizing some things. And the degree to which she changed was incredible. So,
Right.
and there's still some of those base issues that are there, but able to manage and actually function. And now she's at the point where it's like, I'm actually thinking that I want to, like, because she's up north, and it's like, I think I want to move to like Florida, and actually I think I can start working again.
Hmm.
So it's like giving that hope to like going
Yeah,
from like you can't do anything and you can't function, and having your kids help you do stuff, to like, I can actually do this and my body's working again. And it was just really cool to see.
that's awesome, man. And that is like the best part about the work, because it's like, why does anyone want to get healthy? It's not that we really care about that. It's the quality of life. And you know that
Mhm.
you kind of have this in the back of your head that there's a finite amount of time here. It's unbelievable, even at 29 years old. I mean, I still feel great overall, right? And I'm
Mhm.
physically fit, but I can already tell certain things. I was sicker at 21 than I am now, and I would still argue that certain things physically were easier then than it is now. I'm like, oh my gosh, right? So you don't want to spend any time on this earth sick if you don't have to be. You
Mhm.
want to enjoy it to the fullest. So that is a amazing thing to be able to give to someone. If people are interested in what you do and just thought it was as cool of a mix as I did today, from the leptin quiz to also the big five, we can get both at Josh Saint's stuff. Where can they find you? What is the website again?
Website is saintwellness.org. And you can there's a place where you can do a free consult or schedule a free consult. There's the leptin quiz that you can do. I've got a big article about leptin, just kind of like leptin resistance and all that. A lot of information there. And that's actually going to be updated hopefully this summer, because there's new research that I've come across that I'm just kind of constantly tinkering with. But it's just a really cool subject. But yeah. And then also, for people who are interested, we can also do a bioenergetic scan, and that goes over like 440 different areas in your body. So it's a really cool um, connection with the functional labs we do. It always reflects the same stuff. So it's really a cool way to be able to look into the body, emotions, and like any type of potential trauma or shock conflicts there too.
Awesome. And then we have the signature question to finish up the show. Before we get to that, if you guys are still watching live, please give a thank you to Josh in the chat. And remember, we will not have any podcasts in the month of June, except one in the very beginning, because we have our summer open house event going on. It's completely free. Make sure you register fdntraining.com/SOH2025. That's fdntraining.com/SOH2025. Josh, signature question on the show. If we could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and you could get all of our viewers and listeners to do one thing for their health, what would it be? So that means you can get us to start doing one thing, or you can get us to stop doing one thing.
You're going to laugh at this one, but it's get outside and see the sunrise every day.
That's mine as well, actually, believe it or not. That was the one that I put on. So I will not laugh at that at all. I love that, man. And if I could only do one thing, that is still what I would say, honestly.
Mhm.
So, dude, thank you so much. Great conversation. Yeah, 1 hour was not enough. And yeah, I still went 10 minutes over. So thank you so much for just